Hello friends, welcome to Alkem IAS. This is Dr. Rajesh Kumar Mohan and we are continuing with our Indian Express Demystified series. Today we will be discussing 31st May newspaper. So let's start today's discussion. Before this, I would like to tell about myself. I am Dr. Rajesh Kumar Mohan. I've done my MBBS from Government Medical College, Chandigarh. I have worked as Assistant Medical Officer in Indian Ordnance Factory Health Services, and this is my fifth attempt. So let's start with today's newspaper. So center is right now looking at fine-tuning its vaccination strategy. In fact, there are plans to create a new vaccine tracking platform. Right now, we are using various technologies in order to have a unified and a very database approach towards the pandemic. In fact, we are using COVID, that is for registration of vaccination. We are using Arogya Setu app. We are having daily reports of national level caseload of COVID cases in India. But we are not having any vaccine tracking platform, which is needed. And in fact, there are plans to make a vaccine tracking platform. What would be the benefit of a vaccine tracking platform? It will allow the government in order to streamline its vaccine strategy. First of all, as we all know that India is having a very weak vaccination policy, and the vaccination drive is a slow one. In order to ramp up that one, so the focus is on creating this vaccine tracking platform. So what would this vaccine tracking platform do is it would collect data about real-time effectiveness of vaccines, various vaccines like Covishield. So how this data would be helpful? This data may help to analyze whether we can go for a single dose vaccination. And in fact, what the idea is that the presently 90% of our vaccination is done through Covishield, which is basically a subunit viral subunit vaccine. This vaccine was initially developed as a single dose one, but later on, after collecting the efficacy data, it was found that two doses are needed. However, similar kind of vaccines which are made on the similar technology have in fact have a single dose. For example, we have a Johnson and Johnson vaccine in USA, which is a single dose vaccine. Sputnik 5 is also having a single dose regime. So the data regarding single dose, whether the Covishield would be effective in a single dose would be collected through this vaccine tracking platform. This will help that a larger share of the population would be vaccinated at a much faster pace if only one vaccine has to be given. Third thing that it would aim this vaccine tracking platform is that in order to collect the data with regard to the dose interval. Right now we are using uh, the our present recommendations of a delay. For example, recently Covishield second dose delay time was increased based on the data collected in UK, but there is no indigenous data in this regard. So this tracking platform will provide the indigenous data. At the same time, there is a research going on about mixed vaccines, whether the interchangeability in vaccine should be allowed, because as we know right now interchangeability in vaccine is not allowed, as there are no studies conducted on this. So the plans are there now, testing of mixed vaccines would be there done, so that as to know whether the vaccines are as effective if the same type of vaccine used two times, or if we can use a different vaccine for that second dose. So these are the new fine-tuning in vaccine strategy that the government of India is looking at. The next one is editorial in the editorial column revisiting America. So in this regard, it is being said by the editorial that recent visit by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar to the USA has generated goodwill in the new Joe Biden administration. Immediate focus of the external affairs minister was to have a strategy to tackle this pandemic, especially with regard to vaccine delivery. A vaccine collaboration was attempted, which focused on ensuring that raw materials of various vaccines are available for Indian manufacturers to manufacture the vaccine. There are ideas of also delivering close to 90 million doses of vaccines, which are unused in the USA right now. Newspaper reports in the US are saying that the response of the US authorities is positive in this regard. Along with this immediate objective, other objectives were also other talks on other matters were also there. With regard to Indo-Pacific, the significance is very high. The Quad platform, which held a virtual meeting and focused on vaccine collaboration, is an initiative which would be strengthened in nearby years. Then the Afghanistan and Myanmar issue was also discussed. Finally, External Affairs Minister also paid a visit to New York, where he met with the UN Secretary General, where right now, as we know that India is having a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. According to newspaper reports, external affairs ministers want that the present membership of India as a non-permanent member of Security Council will be very significant. It will play a major role in the world affairs. So clearly, India-US relationships are on an upswing, and this has been a consistent policy right from George W. Bush to Barack Obama to Donald Trump and the present administration, Joe Biden. Next is matter of compensation. So what this editorial is talking about, how the GST laws to various states would be compensated. Just like last year when the first wave hit and the lockdown, nationwide lockdown was imposed, there was a impact on the revenues of the state governments. And the state governments have to do a maximum amount of expenditure as health is a state subject. So considering all these aspects and a commitment by the center in order to ensure that the GST shortfall would be compensated, again, there are fears that GST collections are going to be lower. In fact, the e-way bills, which are very fast indicator, they are showing diminishing returns in recent weeks. So, considering this, it is also important that the states be compensated for the second wave induced reduced GST collections. Because of the second wave, localized lockdown were imposed, which disrupted the supply chain and had an impact on the indirect taxation. So, what are the provisions right now in relation to compensation of GST collection? So, there are two provisions. First of all, GST compensation cess. This compensation cess would be used to compensate the states. However, in the times of pandemic, this would be inadequate. So the central government is planning to borrow money in order to finance, borrow money to provide provide the states the necessary revenues in this pandemic. In this second wave, the center has to take into account certain new elements also, because as the second wave had localized lockdowns of varying proportions across the states, so the impact on the states would vary. So varied impact on the states should also be considered while arriving at the GST compensation idea. So at the same time, it will also depend how the economy recovers. If economy recovers very fast, then it would be easier for the union government in order to compensate the states. However, we are not aware how fast the recovery would be there, and there are also fears of third wave. So there is uncertainty in relation to the GST revenues of the union and the state. So let's move on to the next editorial. This editorial is about caring for the caregivers. According to the author, the young workers, healthcare workers, are bearing the brunt of the pandemic. In fact, interns, PG students, nursing students, and other paramedic students and interns are uh, at the forefront of the fight, yet they are most exploited in the present pandemic. And it used to be the case previously also, because they are at the lowest rung of the training, so all the workload goes on to them. In fact, even before pandemic, there were reports of public hospitals, public institutions flouting rules with regard to the working hours, and there were even cases of 100 hours of duty where sleep deprived PG students were taking decisions of medical nature. It is also so this is a clear cut exploitation, and in case of pandemic, that kind of exploitation has also increased because number of health facilities has increased, but the manpower is the same. So this same number of people would have to do more work for more hours. So uh, working hours which were very already highly unregulated and not followed, the rules were not followed, they are going to be stretched further. So the health workforce is now spread thin across the country. Considering this, so we need to focus on this aspect. Second, these very people are facing the brunt of the public. They are at the forefront, brunt of the relatives of the patients. So we recently have seen the news where a young young healthcare workers who are under the training are beaten up by the relatives of the patients. Third aspect is that the compensation to these workers is also inadequate. In fact, the stipend amount is very low and it needs to be improved. So the author is saying that we should regulate the working hours. Then the recent amendment in Epidemic Act in order to ensure that the violence against these doctors is reduced and healthcare workers is reduced is a step in the right direction. Also, there is a need to focus on increasing the stipend to these students. So this is the article talking about. Next is this article about the catch the new technology wave. This is about the cryptocurrency, how the how Indian policymaker needs to be changed in order policy making needs to be changed in order to ensure that we should not miss this new technological wave. So it is written by Shashi Tharoor and Anil K. Anthony. What is the context of it? Recently, we are witnessing that there is a rise of cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency was created in 2008 financial crisis by Satoshi Nakamoto, which uses uh, which uses cryptology and blockchain technology in order to create a decentralized system of currency. However, for the policy makers, it's very difficult to understand that how a currency which has no sovereign backing is being coming into the public domain at such a vast pace. This is because the faith in the financial institutions reduced in 2008 financial crisis. At the same time, recently also in 2020 when the pandemic happened, the lockdown happened, the financial impact of the lockdown. So the faith of people in the centralized currency reduced, resulting in rise of decentralized currency. In fact, new startups are happening world over, which are like Ethereum and other kind of cryptocurrencies, which are creating jobs also, wealth creation is also happening. However, the response of the governments is very skeptical. China, for example, recently banned the virtual currency. India is also, uh, for example, RBI had a circular banning the cryptocurrency, and those institutions and applications who are dealing with the cryptocurrency were asked to stop it. But Supreme Court stopped this directive of the RBI, and also following which the central government is planning to come up with a law to ban the cryptocurrency. But at the same time, Indian regulator RBI, walking in the footsteps of China, is planning to launch a centralized currency system using the technology, blockchain technology. But according to the authorities, it is counterintuitive, because the main aim of this technology is to have a decentralized currency. So putting centralization into a decentralized architecture would not be there. So the biggest area of concern, according to the author, is that how our policymakers respond to these kind of situations. Our policymakers, if they do not understand a new technology, they go for banning the technology, and this is what we are witnessing. Rather than banning, we should focus on regulating these technologies, because they have, in fact, have some wealth creation value. You know, for example, now recently, because of this rise in the cryptocurrency, world over, uh, these blockchain startups are receiving a fund up to $2.6 trillion. But in India's case, only 0.2% of the amount raised globally is there in India. So India, being such a big country, which was such a big economy, out of $2.6 billion raised in venture capital for blockchain technology startups, only 0.2% is being raised for India, because of the policy uncertainty that is existing in India. So there are plans of banning it. So rather than this, the policymakers should change their attitude and adopt this technology, should regulate in a way that it is enabling environment for this technology is provided. Some spin-offs from the technology are there in legal side, also contract enforcement, and in order to reduce the transaction cost, there are there are benefits associated with this cryptocurrency and the blockchain technology. We should also know that historically we have been late adopters of various digital revolutions, be it the semiconductors, the internet, smartphones, 4G, 5G. So because of that, we have to catch up in later years. So this is a new technology. We should not repeat the mistakes of the past, where we initially ban a thing and then we have to catch up the technological arena with regard to the cryptocurrency. Next is 7 years of change. Here, the author is highlighting various achievements of present government. In fact, 7 years of NDA have happened, 5 years and 2 years, 5 plus 2. So some achievements have been highlighted by the author with regard to the scheme implementation. First is the Jan Dhan Yojana. Now there are 42 crore bank accounts. So now the banking of the unbanked is happening. Second is then Mudra Yojana, funding the unfunded, where 29 crore loan sanctions have happened, amounting to about 15 lakh crore dispersals. Second, undigitized have been digitized through UPI, Uniform Payment Interface, and 25 billion real-time transactions in 2022 happened, creating India as the largest digital payment ecosystem in the world. Along with these achievements in implementing various schemes, the present government has also focused on on changing in the mindset. So, what are the broad changes that have happened? First of all, with regard to economic policy formation. Previously, economic policy focused too much on the macroeconomics, neglecting the microeconomics, and this had repercussions on the economic scenario also. Modi government through also is focusing on microeconomics, like electrifying the villages, proper sanitation, and recently the idea of piped tap, Har Ghar Jal, and Nal Se Jal idea. So these ideas are focusing on microeconomics. Second change has been in change in the mindset, where across these years post-independence, we started in thinking that central government can provide a second best service. But right now, the government is focusing on providing the first class service to the citizens. When vaccine was developed, it was ensured that Indian companies also make the vaccines. Third change has been the acquired character of 70 years. When a big power comes, so we used to come take one step backwards with especially with regard to China. So that has that has changed in the recent years, where we are now giving a response to big powers, and are not going by the acquired character of not responding to the big powers. The incident in Doklam, face of and the Pangong Lake is a case in point. Fourth change has been in the foreign policy. The foreign policy previously was a moral science with no focus on national interest. Now focus on national interest is back. Fifth was that the government is encouraging the private sector, and private entrepreneurs are not seen in a negative light as used to be there previously. In fact, the government is focusing of legitimate and ethical wealth creation. Sixth focus of the government is with regard to women empowerment. The government has taken various initiatives. For example, many union ministers are women. Then the Permanent Commission in Armed Forces. Then uh, the MSME sector, promotion to them, various legislative changes like triple talaq, empowering the women. So it's a contribution to the social arena with regard to women empowerment is very significant. And finally, the government has been uh, contributing heavily in order to fuse our glorious civilizational heritage with a modern impulse. So the civilizational heritage of India is being respected again. So this is the various changes that the author is saying that the present government has brought to India. Next article is with regard to the Bengal Chief Secretary, who is an IAS officer, whose tenure was increased recently for 3 months for in public interest, and it was called when the Chief Minister of West Bengal decided to made the Prime Minister to wait for 30 minutes. Now this IAS officer has been called on central deputation. So this explained article is focusing on what are the provisions with regard to extending the service of a civil servant, and second is with regard to deputation. What are the rules and how the punishment, the disciplinary action of these officers is done. So first of all, how the extension is given. Extension is given based on the rule 16 of death cum retirement benefit rule, which says that if a member of the service is working with budget, full-time member of a committee whose work has not been completed, then 3 months extension can be given. In case of chief secretary of the state, 6 months extension can be done. Here the central government has to take the decision, and the state government, after prior approval, the central government is to take the decision. Second is with regard to deputation. In normal circumstances, there is a offer list of the all India services officer. Which are all India services? We have Indian Administrative Services, Indian Police Services, and Indian Forest Services. So there is an offer letter. Those officers who want to go for a central deputation can opt for it, and with the approval of the state government and the central government, they can go to the deputation in central government. Here, if there is conflict between center and state, it is the center who would be taking the decision. So in the present context, clearly the center government is saying that asking the IAS officer to go for a central deputation, and in this in this regard, the central would have a final say into it. Next is disciplinary. What if the IAS officer he refuses? Would central government have the power to take disciplinary action against this IAS officer? Uh, Presently, he's working under state government. So, central government cannot take disciplinary action. It would be up to the state governments if they refuse to go on central deputation. However, what next will happen is that according to DOPT officials, there can be three scenarios. First is the chief secretary can decline the extension, and in that case, he would have to retire today and skip the central deputation. Second, if he wants to continue on extension as chief secretary, then in that particular case, uh, there would be opening of possibility of disciplinary action of the center, because now center's orders have been refused by the state's chief secretary if he continues with the extension and continues as chief secretary. And third, he can report to the center on Monday and continue the extension on central deputation. These are the three avenues available to the chief secretary. So let's see how the things unfold in the present circumstances. So with this, our newspaper analysis of today has come to an end. So thank you for watching the Indian Express Demystified series. I would like to like the video, comment on it, also subscribe to our Alkem IAS channel. You can also join our Telegram channel. The notes are available in the description given below. Thank you so much.